Created in 1841, housework was believed to be suited for women, being that they do indeed give birth to children and were expected to do what nurturers do and stay at home. As time progressed, each individual in every household, mother, father, and children played a role and contributed to the household, producing goods for sale in the market. Over time, gender roles began to disperse, starting with African American households. As times got hard, both women and men had to work. As Ruben mentioned in Chapter 5, a study was given where parents were asked to describe their newborn babies. All of the babies were selected by similar weight and height classes. Parents of daughters described their daughters very differently from parents who described their sons. Researchers realized when parents were describing their children, instead of describing their realistic features, they were applying gender stereotypes which could differentiate treatments between their male and female children. Sex segregation is the physical, legal, and cultural separation of people according to their biological sex. This is distinct from gender segregation, which is the separation of people according to social construction of gender. In my opinion, they're both in violation of capabilities and human rights. Some can counter-argue that it is central to certain religious laws. Sex segregation taken as a whole, can be caused by societal pressures, historical practices, and socialized preferences. Literally, sex segregation can be physical and spatial separation, but also means one sex can be excluded from participation in an occupation. Sex segregation can be broken down into 4 categories: mandatory, administrative, permissive, or voluntary. Mandatory and administrative sex segregation are required and enforced by governments and public environments, while permissive and voluntary sex segregation are stance chosen by public and private institutions, but within the capacity of the law. Mandatory sex segregation is legally required and enforced to separation based on sex. Examples include separation of men and women in prisons, law enforcement, military restrooms, and housing. These mandatory rules can be nuanced in military service, where sexes are often separated, and regulations in which sexes can participate in roles like frontline infantry, even mandatory same-sex body searches. Examples of administrative sex segregations include government-sponsored medical research, sports leagues, public hospitals with shared rooms, and rehabilitation programs. Administrative sex segregations can occur in these environments simply as through provisioning of segregated rooms, even though there could be limited legal requirements due also. Lastly, permissive sex segregation is segregation which is explicitly permitted by law, that is, definitely authorized but not quite legally required. Here are some examples on this slide: athletic teams, social fraternities, social sororities, choirs and choruses, voluntary youth organizations, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, father and son activities, mother-daughter activities, sex-exclusive beauty pageants. All of these are sex segregations that are neither legally mandated nor enacted in administrative capacity or explicitly permitted by the law. All of these are sex segregations that are neither legally mandated nor enacted in administrative capacity or explicitly permitted by the law. All of these are sex segregations that are neither legally mandated nor enacted in administrative capacity or explicitly permitted. Paternalism is behavior by an organization or state which limits a person or group's liberty or autonomy. This is when hegemony comes to place. You might ask, what is hegemony? Hegemony is the ideologies of a dominant class are normalized and internalized by lower classes. This happens because those who are in position of power tend to control the media and the system of information that society produces. You may ask, who are these mysterious media owners? These media owners happen to be high class, rich white men who are also CEOs of big corporations like Disney, NBC, CBS, and Time Warner. These very rich white men are normally conservatives and in the interest of big business gaining profits for or by shareholders and perspectives of companies. And then we have an illusion of choice. Everyone basically becomes homogenized, hint, hint, hegemony. You think you have a choice of what you're getting, but it's pretty much all the same. So how do we fix this issue? Introduce diversification into the system. This can be done by primarily inviting women to become part of the production process, especially my very own sisters, African American women. This allows for diversification and representation in views that we don't usually see in a homogenized media. It's not hard for people to do. We just have to think outside of the box. Many people might wonder what media will look like if it was so homogenized, if it wasn't so homogenized, if we actually allowed women to become makers in the production process of our media. This is what I wanted to focus on the whole entire time. We should allow women to have more say so in our media, our community, our workforce, and I believe that things would definitely change.